Good morning. Today is February 26th, 2022. It is 2 days after the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, which is still ongoing. What I want to discuss today is not the particulars or the history of the relationship between Russia and the Ukraine, the relationship between Russia and Eastern Europe, the relationship between Russia and NATO forces. These require a careful look. They require sensitive and intelligent geopolitical understanding. And this war is a tragedy. Every life lost is tragic and requires and deserves the prayers of all. We pray for a rapid end to aggression and to the restoration of livable civilian life in the Ukraine, all parts of the Ukraine. We're sorry for the soldiers and young people on both sides that are following the directions of their leaders, which will never see the front lines of battle. Although President Zelensky is sitting on the front lines of battle. This is not the purpose of this podcast is not to take sides. The purpose of this podcast is to indicate that we are living through a moment in history that we have not seen in our lifetimes. History is changing right now in this day. Essentially, what we are witnessing is the end of national-based concept for the national-based concept for good and evil. It used to be that certain countries with despotic leaders, expansionist agendas, and the willingness to attack unprovoked in the pursuit of world hegemony were described and understood as rogue states and evil states. And then there was the world of free democracies, and these were understood as good states or the ideal of individual freedom and human freedom. The events of the past 2 years, including the exploitation of the COVID pandemic, has resulted in a restructuring of world affairs so that we now find ourselves in a global definition of good and evil, not divided by national geography. This is the first time this has happened in our lives. We are now at a new point in human history. We are now at a global identity in which good and evil has transcended the reality of geographical borders and has entered into an entirely new, non-geographical points of location. Immediately upon the Russian attack on the Ukraine, there were massive anti-war protests in the Soviet Union. These were brutally crushed by Putin. When that happened, I cynically said, Putin has taken a page out of Trudeau's playbook. I point out this cynical or ironic statement in order to bolster what I want to describe as the point of this podcast. Ordinarily, champions of democracy would have to intervene whenever a weaker country suffers under the aggressive attack of a superpower, such as the Chinese aggression in Hong Kong, Chinese potential preparing for aggressive and expansionist activity in Taiwan and the South China Sea. And now we witness the Vladimir Putin's attack on the Ukraine. Until today, or until now, what would be needed in the face of rogue, aggressive, militaristic states that are willing to attack and occupy foreign nations and use military force for the pursuit of ideological and expansionist intentions. The world's democracies would have to rally around, would have to rally to come together to confront and if necessary, militarily prevent the continued aggression of a force that is seeking to oppress by tyrannical and military oppression of a people. This was the nature of the Soviet Union. This was the nature of communist China, that people were oppressed, that the people in their countries did not have freedoms. What has happened today is that there is no country on earth that has demonstrated a commitment to democracy. The United States abandoned, its present administration most especially, has abandoned a commitment to democracy. We have political prisoners. We have people being held in solitary confinement without charges. We have the Department of Justice identifying people with dissenting opinions as domestic terrorists. People with political opinions in America are being hunted down as domestic terrorists. In Canada, one of the great democracies in the world, we just saw a brutal crackdown on peaceful protesters expressing political dissent. As we speak now, both in America and in Canada, people are being hunted down and destroyed economically, bank accounts being frozen, emergency measures being declared by the state, so that those countries that represent democracy cannot stand against the activity of a military aggressor like Vladimir Putin, because they have already abandoned a commitment to a free people with constitutionally guaranteed rights. Neither the US, nor Canada, nor Austria, nor Germany, nor France, nor Australia, nor New Zealand, every one of these countries, their administrations, their current administrations, turned against their own people and abandoned and forfeited all democratic principles and the guarantees of human rights and human freedoms in their country. For this reason, the invasion of Ukraine by the Soviet Union, there is no moral force anymore that's geographically located that can stand against Russia. These countries are no better. Who are better are the citizens of every country I just identified. There's tens of millions of Americans who believe in the ideals of democracy and individual freedom and responsibility and the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. In Canada, there are millions of people that adhere to and are committed to, even with life and self-destruction, committed to the ideals of the Canadian Charter, of one of the great democracies in history. The same in Australia, the same in Austria, in Germany, in France. Where goodness lies is no longer in saying, I'm from a country with democratic freedoms. When you're in a country where political dissent is defined as domestic terrorism, you are not in a democratic country. You are under tyrannical rule. You are under authoritarian rule in Canada, in the United States, in France, in Germany, especially those countries with no Second Amendment rights. The people in power have armies. They're turning armies against their own citizens. That means that a new identity, one is no longer an American. One is either a supporter of the removal of democratic rights. That would include the media, universities, certain churches, big tech, corporate boards, entertainment industry, if they are committed to supporting the removal of individual rights guaranteed in the First Amendment, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of belief, every single individual in America that is supporting the administration that seeks to remove God-given guarantees of human freedom and human rights, these are the people who are on the side of evil. It's not like the Soviet Union is evil. It's not like communist China is evil. It's not like Idi Amin of the Congo is evil. The people that are evil are the ones that seek to use the force and power and military power and intelligence and surveillance to deprive human beings of their God-given rights. And those people are in America, they're in Canada, they're in Australia. That means that the era of national identity and the effort to try to understand what areas are good and what areas are evil is past. What areas are good are the people who are willing to risk their lives and to stand for democratic principles. What areas are bad are the people who enact the tyrannical and oppressive removal of democratic freedoms from human beings. That includes major sectors of the United States, major sectors of Canada, major sectors of every democracy in the world. They came to exploit the COVID pandemic to deprive people of God-given rights and freedoms. The point of this podcast is simple. We have entered into a new era. It's a global era, but it's not the reset that was anticipated by the power elite globalists who seek to control the lives of all people on earth. It's a reset that redefines the locale of who are good and who are evil. Who are good are those who seek to protect and defend God-given freedoms and God-given human rights. Those who are on the side of evil are no longer located in some country or some rogue nation like North Korea. No. They are in every country right now. Every country has an element of rogue, tyrannical, authoritarian rulership. And they are supported by the institutions in their countries that act as a Pravda-like media, that act as a censorial big tech, that act as a tyrannical control of schools and education, and so forth. The attack of Russia on the Ukraine is the final straw that has revealed a redefining, realigning, redefinition of life in the world. National geographies have fallen. They have fallen over the past 2 years, in which every democratic country fell under the rule of a power elite that is willing to deny human rights. Not in the Congo, not in North Korea, in the United States of America, in Canada, where people were trampled under horses' hoofs for having a political opinion and for demonstrating peacefully and prayerfully, same as in the United States of America. Therefore, there's no country that can properly stand to condemn the Soviet Union, because every country has participated in this type of behavior. Now it is the time for people of godliness and of goodness to recognize one another internationally and globally and define ourselves as either on the side of good or on the side of evil. Evil seeks to deny people God-given freedoms and rights. Identify them. You can spot them. Turn on your TV. You can see which side people are advocating. Go on Twitter and see who's being banned. Go to Australia and see who's being dragged into internment camps over vaccinations. This is the situation we're in today. And this is the option we have today. We don't have the luxury of being born as Americans and representing the ideal of generosity and global health, because half of our country has decided to support the removal of constitutionally guaranteed God-given rights and freedoms. It's happened in every democracy in the world. So this is something new. This is something we have to ponder. This is something we have to dedicate ourselves to realigning and reestablishing, where the hope for a future world of peace and prosperity lies. Thank you for listening.